So now we're into week 3 here of our tutorials, and just to kind of quickly review where we've been and where we're headed and where we are today. Okay, you guys are now experts at using the Winlink software. You've sent a simple message, you know all the additional capabilities and customization features. So today we're now going to kind of get down into some of the nuts and bolts and actually start talking about how to figure out how connect your computer to your radio and get those working. Because it's somewhat complex, or can be complex. I split it among two different separate tutorials. Today we'll focus kind of more on some just representative hardware notional configurations, and then I will go through a couple of examples of kind of some simple setups. You can still learn a lot about what's necessary to set it up, but these are fairly simple, straightforward type of setups, kind of using that approach of crawl, walk, run. And so we're going to start with simple. And then in a couple weeks, several weeks, let's do tutorial 5, which will talk a little bit more about some radio setup options, and then some other Winlink operating modes. I could easily talk about doing another 5 tutorials and go into a lot more depth about different operating modes for Winlink, but that's kind of beyond the scope of what was the initial effort here. So, okay, but before we begin, a little levity here. I saw this. It was basically a sign in a bookstore, and I thought it was somewhat appropriate. Hopefully these times are behind us, and now we will be moved to this history section. But I thought that was interesting. So, okay, I grabbed this figure out of another briefing, and it provides kind of an overview of the larger Winlink system altogether. And so far, we focused mostly what's down here with the direct user. It has email user. It's also your Winlink user, but the solid blue line indicates kind of using the internet. And we've communicated with what's called the Common Message Server, the CMS. If you look at the dialog that shows up when you connect and start a session, it'll talk about CMS. And that's basically what that refers to. It's the Common Message Server. It utilizes Amazon Web Service, but this is basically how your messages are stored, and also how they're connected around the world using the internet. What we're going to now talk about, or at least focus on today, is actually setting up a client station that communicates now with a radio mail server, an RMS gateway via RF. And then these RMS gateways then are connected to the internet, or through the internet to the CMS servers. And that's basically then how they will transfer messages around the world. If your message is to a Winlink user that's halfway around the world, it will then be located on the CMS server. And when your client or the recipient wants to pick up a mail, he'll contact his local gateway server. It will say, hey, are there any messages for XYZ, and contacting the CMS, and essentially download the message and relay that to your end recipient. So that's basically kind of how it overview. This is a fairly simplistic view of the overall Winlink system. It's actually, because of the simplistic, it's a little confusing, but this kind of gives you at least a better idea in terms of when we start talking about RMS and CMS, what that is. There is an additional mode here that's called the radio only mode. We won't really be talking about that till tutorial 5. This is basically kind of, we'll be able to support Winlink communication should the internet go down. Basically, this allows you to kind of using various message gateways, send a message kind of hopscotch across the country as needed. Okay. And I guess since we have such a small crowd, if anybody has any questions, by all means, just speak up and we'll try to address things as they come up. Okay, so back to kind of the Winlink Express, and so far, kind of the power of Winlink is under that pull-down menu that's next to the open session. So far, we've used Telnet Winlink, which is primarily using the internet. And then you'll see now what's listed underneath there is a variety of other different types of communication modes. I'm calling it communication modes. They're really more kind of encoding options of how your message is going to get encoded. Common ones are packet and PACTOR, RDOP, VARA. These are the common ones. And you'll see that those are basically using, when it says the Winlink, that's using that Winlink system that I had showed in the previous chart. There are other options here. You'll see listed are similar communication modes, but PDP stands for peer-to-peer, and we'll talk about that in tutorial 5 as well. But basically, all the options that are not Telnet are radio communication options. And this provides a little more information. I realize there's a lot going on here. We'll focus mostly on what's on the left in the blue columns. And you can see that the different communication modes here, there's Telnet, Packet, VARA, RDOP, VARA, HF, and PACTOR. These are the common communication modes, and then generally how they're utilized, okay? So the first column here is the internet. We're familiar with this. This is Telnet. So if you're using internet, you use the Telnet mode. If you want to use UHF and VHF, the communication modes are generally Packet and VARA FM. Those are pretty much the ones available to UHF, VHF. HF, it's RDOP, VARA, HF, and PACTOR. And then the rest of the chart will go into a little more detail in as we explore the various connections and other options in this and other tutorials. Okay, so this is kind of gets down now where we're starting to see both the hardware and the software configurations. And so basically what I'm trying to show here is, okay, how we connect the computer with running your Winlink Express, and how it would be then connected depending on the communication mode that you want to use. And so the next kind of column over here under the COM mode, we say Telnet for internet only. And basically we've done this before, or we've done this previously. And then for the UHF, VHF, we can utilize Packet or VARA FM, and for HF, RDOP, VARA HF, and PACTOR. We won't really be discussing much at all about HF in any of these tutorials, primarily because I don't really see OCHEART utilizing HF within our network. It's just at this point, HF is primarily utilized for long distance type of Winlink connections. If we had a large area emergency where the internet was down through like most of Southern California, for example, or Orange County and LA County or things like that, and you needed to get outside the area to an internet connection like to Arizona or Northern California, HF would provide you with that longer distance communication capability. So focusing on the VHF and UHF, it's the Packet or VARA FM. I'll talk a little bit about VARA FM in the 5th tutorial, but for most effort here, most discussion is going to be just on Packet. That's the focus of this tutorial and tutorial 4, and primarily is because it is kind of one of the more common type of encoding options. It's generally supported by all gateways. So it's pretty much, once you're able to use packet communication, you're pretty much good for most of your communication needs. And one of the nice things about packet is it's already built into the Winlink Express software. So you don't need to download or install any software to support packet communications. Okay, and then you'll see there for packet, I have kind of two different ways of using the packet type in communication mode. And you see the top arrow there just goes directly off to a VHF, UHF radio that already has some type of built-in digital interface, TNC, digital, communications interface. That is by far the simplest type of communication, using packet with a digital interface radio. And that'll be the focus mainly of today's tutorial. And then in tutorial 4, we'll talk about the next branch, which then uses some type of sound modem software and some type of sound card interface to another radio that doesn't have a digital interface. And then the configurations in the radios I've shown here and the sound card interfaces are all notional. They're just to show representative equipment. Clearly in the amateur radio world, we have lots and lots of options, and we have new equipment, we've got old equipment. So there's lots of variability here, and it's really, really difficult to try to address all the variations. And so what I'm trying to do here is just kind of give you kind of notionally how things are connected. Okay, I guess any questions at this point?
Yeah, I have a couple. The second route that you show for packet there, the one that says sound modem software, and then it's got the Tigertronics box. I don't see a path there for hardware TNC. That would be a third option, I suppose.
Yes. Well, yeah, it would be kind of in lieu of the sound modem software and that's basically one box that kind of solves that problem. Yeah.
So my second question is the sound modem software. Is that an additional package that you would run besides Winlink Express, or does Winlink Express have its own ability to generate the tones?
For this purposes, and we'll talk about this in tutorial 4, it's a separate software package.
Okay.
But it installs on the same computer that Winlink is.
Okay.
And
thanks.
there's a number of options there. So yeah. Okay. Now let's start moving forward. One of the questions always comes up is, well, what's the advantages and disadvantages of all these different communication modes? And so did a little research and found some additional information about general transfer speed times using the different communication modes. Now I got this information from different sources, so it's a little kind of apples and oranges, but a couple of things to the first or the second bullet down is that Winlink is in the process of transitioning away from the WinMore option to the newer VARA and RDOP modes. That's why WinMore is still listed as part of the pull down menu, but generally they prefer that you use VARA or RDOP. Primarily because they're much more efficient. VARA actually can approach very good speeds under good conditions. I realize that it both has to be at the sending end and the receiving end, both conditions. But for essentially a software solution, it's a great option. And that RDOP can approach PACTOR speeds at both ends as well. So that's good. The primarily reason why both RDOP and VARA are software packages that you can download. I know VARA, they have a free version and they have a paid for version. I think RDOP is similar. And then PACTOR is clearly the best of the world, but you pay for it. There has a number of different PACTOR encoding options. You can see there in the table, there's PACTOR 1, 2, 3, and 4. PACTOR 4 is the latest, but as my notes shows there, that PACTOR 4 is not yet legal in the United States. The FCC has not granted approval to use it. They have provided special exemption use during national disasters, and occasionally you get the ARRL, email saying that for a particular disaster that FCC has allowed its use. And then in the table you can see some of the speed times. Obviously, Telnet is the fastest. You're using direct, high-speed internet. You can see the different packet options in terms of 1200 baud or 9600 baud. The 1200 one node option is basically you're using another gateway as kind of a repeater. WinMore is listed here, but again, it's generally not recommended. And then the PACTOR speeds, you can see that they significantly get better and better with the different PACTOR versions. Also, one of the reasons why PACTOR 1 is so slow is generally PACTOR is used with HF, and your speed at HF, because of the much lower bandwidth offered at HF, you're talking at a lot of times at very, very low baud rates, sometimes down into the just double-digit type baud rates, 50, 80 baud rates using HF, depending on, of course, on which frequency you use. So that's one reason why the time is so long using just the PACTOR 1 and 2. But you can see PACTOR 3, which is legal, is much, much more faster. Then I had mentioned the cost of a PACTOR modem. The current PACTOR 4 modems are generally about $1,500 to $2,000 just for the modem. So you can see they're pretty pricey to step up to that. And there was one thing. Oh, also it's worth noting, you can see in the first bullet I have, this is a 4K message. And if you remember our last briefing, the presentation, I talked about, how you help reduce the message size, and talked about that image, trying to compress that image or resize the image. And even when I was done, I said it was 80K. So that's basically what, 20 times larger than this 4K message. So you can just rough order as a magnitude, multiply these transfer times by 20, and you can see the ouch. Oh my gosh, these would be painful to send large messages. So again, that's one of the reasons why keeping your messages small, and a lot of, you can understand more why the background kind of wiring of Winlink is designed to keep messages as small as possible. Okay, now we're going to walk through kind of hooking up a couple of radios, and I put together a couple of examples here. I guess, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your point of view, when I got involved in amateur radio, which was fairly recently in the last few years, I knew from the offset that I wanted to be able to support digital communication. And so I made sure that the radios I purchased had built-in digital interfaces. And as a result, I reaped the reward of that when hooking it up to Winlink. So this actually represents a couple of the radios I have, the Kenwood D710 and the Kenwood handheld D74. And so I'll kind of walk through these examples, and these are, again, kind of a crawl, walk, run approach of keeping it simple. Example one there was connecting up to the mobile radio, the D710, which I think is probably, if not the simplest, one of the simplest radios to hook up to Winlink, because the only thing you really need is that cable. basically you have to go, I think most manufacturers sell their very pricey little digital interface cables. And in the case of Kenwood, yes, they have a radio special, I think it's a special DIN connection to a serial cable connection. And unfortunately, most computers nowadays don't have serial interfaces, so you have to buy a second cable of a serial to USB cable to be able to plug it in to the computer. But that's basically the only thing you need to do is buy these two cables. And then obviously for the example 2 there is somewhat simple as well, and it's kind of unique in that it uses Bluetooth to connect between the radio and the computer. One of the nice things about these radios is that some of the setup connection options are already built into Winlink. They have kind of these pre-configured, and I've shown there in the example there is some of the packet TNC type of connections. And one of the lucky parts is that you can see the Kenwood radios are already listed down as options in there. So in this particular case, the Kenwood D10, and it says A band, and that's because this particular radio has 2 bands, and so you need to tell it which band are you going to actually use for the Winlink connection. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so now let's go ahead and kind of start working through the exercise of doing a radio setup and sending a radio message. So again, we open up the connection mode or communication modes, and I pick packet Winlink, and then I hit open session, and then a packet Winlink session is opened. And in this case, want to first thing you do, you might get some, you can see it once you open the session, you're going to get some additional dialogue. It probably may, unable to connect or something like that. That's because you haven't really gone through and done the settings yet. So what we're going to do is go ahead and click on the settings. And this comes up with this window, which is the packet Winlink setting. And so the first option there is basically in this case, I click the Kenwood D10 radio. And then probably the more difficult options is the serial port and the baud rate. And so you have to select the particular COM port that's needed. And this basically, I have a separate backup chart to talk about when you're on a Windows computer. You type in device manager and you go to the COM to find out which COM port. If you push the down arrow, it will list what active COM ports are available. It's generally just 2 or 3. So you can, if worse comes to worse, you can just try one and then see if it works, and try the next one and see if that works till you get one that works. And then under the serial port option, there's really just 1200 baud or 96. Actually, I'm sorry, there are probably more options underneath that. Generally the default and the most common is the 9600 baud. This is important to note that this is the COM rate between the computer and the radio. It's not, kind of foot stomp here, not the same as the communication rate that the radio is talking out through RF. So most radios can support 9600 bauds between the radio and the computer, even though they can't talk to 9600 baud through RF. And then under the TNC parameters, most of the time the default settings work okay. Depending on what packet TNC type you click, the top menu part, it may come back once you hit update. It may come back and say, hey, we recommend that you change one of these settings. And the best is to just go ahead and make that recommended change.
We have a question from Cher.
Okay, Cher, go ahead.
Actually, no, I must have pushed something, but hi guys.
Hi.
No question. And you're doing great. So thanks so much. Error on my part.
Okay,
Scott,
No
I have a question.
sure.
Do you ever select 9600 baud, or is 1200 always used?
You mean down under the
The
parameters?
TNC, yeah.
Yes, actually, yes. That's actually controls how that's the opposite. This is the communication of the radio via RF. So if you're talking to a gateway that can only do 1200 baud, make sure you select 1200 baud. And this is again, I got lucky. I said, if you guys really want simple life, go buy a Kenwood D10. I mean, that's 710. It makes life so much easier because to the point where it's communicating with the radio, it knows ahead of time, based on the gateway that you choose, which baud to choose. I mean, it's that smart that it knows that I never actually have to pick the 1200 or the 9600 there because it knows ahead of time which gateway I'm using and will pick the right baud rate. So okay, I guess I'm not honest disclaimers. I'm not a Kenwood salesman, I guess, but I'm just in terms of making life easier. Okay, so once we basically make these selections and we hit update, we go back to the Winlink session window. And in this time, now we're going to pick the channel selection. Okay, so what this does is when you hit channel selection, you open up a packet channel selector window, and you will now list based on the grid square that you put in terms of your initial settings way back in terms of setting up Winlink. It says, okay, these are the closest gateways to your location. And it basically uses the center of the grid square to the center of the grid square for kind of the distances. So you can see here the list of all the gateways. And if you're sitting at your computer in your office or wherever, and your computer is connected to the internet, just go ahead, update table via internet, and it will then take a few seconds and then update, go out to winlink.org and get the latest and organize them by their distance from your location. So a couple of things to note in this table is, again, it's in the order of closest down to the farthest away in order. The first column is the frequency of the call sign, and then the frequency, and then there's the baud, the 1200 baud. So that's basically saying that gateway can communicate at 1200 baud. It's grid square. It's also what group of Winlink users does it support. And you'll see the public, and then you just scroll down, you'll see MCOM, the 7th or 8th one down there, the N7YMM one is an MCOM. And if you remember back when you set up Winlink, that mess down one of the options was I had asked you to put, it said public and then put a space and type in MCOM. And because of that, when you update the table, it shows you both public and MCOM channels are available to you. Okay, and then the next column is distance and then general bearings in degrees. This is good for me to know because I live in a valley, and so I can I can talk essentially east somewhat okay, but I can't talk west of me. So anything that's west is pretty much a no-go. In fact, as I've pointed out, I live in a valley, and so really actually none of these are available to me from my home. I have to literally go portable to be able to get to any of these. So that's kind of key here, and basically what you do is select the particular channel, and now Winlink knows that you're planning on using that channel. A couple of things that I have done personally is I take a screen capture of this, and then I go literally as when I update my channel listings for my radios, I put in the first 20 or 25 of these channels. I put them into my channel listing. So I have a whole set of channels that are my local gateways. So it just makes it easier for me when I go to select a gateway. It's just, okay, it's channel 414 or 404 or whatever. So the other thing of note here is that you will notice that any of the channels that are listed as 9600 baud are UHF channels. So you can see the fourth one down, the NBR, the second NBR is 431.475, that's 9600 baud. And then way down near the bottom, you'll see another one that supports 9600 baud, and that's again also a UHF channel. But the reverse isn't exactly unique either. There's a one about halfway down that's a 441. It still only supports 1200 baud. So just a couple of things to note. So just FYI, the gateway that I'm putting together is going to be a 400 megahertz and just be able to support 9600 baud. Okay, any questions so far?
Yeah, just real quick, because sometimes the distance isn't the clue for what's going to work. Are any of these particularly high level?
Mean like on mountaintops?
Yeah.
Good question. I don't know. You can go to winlink.org and go through and search, and they do list. You can search on local gateways that way on the winlink.org website, and they show a map actually, and you can kind of just keep zooming in onto Orange County, and it'll show like for packet gateways which ones are around, and if you click on one, it will give you a little summary information about where that is. It doesn't give an address per se. I think you have to do a little more research if you want to find the address. I suspect that most of these are at people's houses, so unless they're lucky enough to live on a hill, you're probably not lucky. It's not an option. So.
Thanks.
Scott, I have a question.
Yeah.
Are the 2 meter gateways always 1200 baud? Do they have to be 1200 baud?
I don't know that answer for definitively. All I can say is every one that I've seen, the VHF ones are 1200 baud.
Probably means they have to, right?
Yeah.
Thanks.
I don't think you're allowed to run 9600 on 2 meters unless I'm wrong.
You are allowed, or you're not allowed?
I think you are not allowed on 2 meters.
Yeah. My suspicion is it exceeds
the bandwidth thing.
Yeah, the bandwidth thing. Okay, and just another note is the bottom little box that I have down there is the channels listed are the ones that are compatible with the selected communication modes, i.e. packet. So I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but should you decide to use like VARA, and you had gone through and said, I want to set up a VARA session, now what would be listed is only those gateways that support VARA. So you would get a little different listing of gateways. So that's one reason why it says up here packet channel selector as opposed to a VARA channel selector. So just to let you know. So basically by choosing the particular communication modes, it pre-selects or pre-filters out those gateways that support the particular communication mode that you want. Okay, so now we go back to the radio, and I remember I selected the KE6VZZ10, and so you have to either write that down or remember it and make sure that you know that again, back here, it says the frequency is 144.970. So program the radio to 144.970. And then again, as my case, I put all these into my channel listing. So all I do is go to channel 404. So I type in 404, and then basically here's the channel. And then I have to tell the radio that, oh, by the way, when the push to talk button goes, it's going to be a digital communication. And so in this particular radio, there's a button over here called TNC, and I click on this until it says packet 12, and it just happens to say packet. That doesn't necessarily mean Winlink packet. It just means packet because the other option it toggles is between to APRS. So it knows that it's 1200 baud, and it's not an APRS piece of information coming through. And also that because I selected channel A, which is the left side of the radio here, that the push to talk button is activated on the channel A. Okay, so that basically now the radio is set up. And so then we go back to the packet Winlink session, and I hit start. And so it basically calls out to that radio, that particular gateway, opening up the COM port that it was, knows that I'm talking to Kenwood radio, and it tries to read, you hear it talking, sending out. Oh, you see the bar move that it's transmitting, and voila, it connected to that gateway, and then that gateway will then go out and check to the common message server, CMS, and try to see if there's any messages for me, KM6RTE, and it found one, and so it basically downloaded a message that I'd sent it as a test message. Received it. You will see up in this little section of the window a little green bar appear as it's downloading the message, and if you're sending a message, a little red bar will appear saying it's sending the message, and it's kind of like that time to complete type of indicator that kind of scrolls across the screen as it gets to 0 to 100% done. And then when it's done, it basically says that I sent 0 messages, received 1 message. It was a total of 175 bytes, and disconnected was requested, and then disconnected was reported. So basically that's the communication through the radio. Okay, any questions at this point? Okay, now again, you haven't seen all the troubleshooting spots. Like I said, the D710 is a great radio to work with in terms of being very pleasant to work with. But it took a couple tries. I mean, checking the baud, making sure my settings were correct and trying things and then trying. So the best way is just, there's going to be a certain amount of trial and error at going through this. But this was a dream compared to a lot of the others. Okay, so moving on to example number 2, which is the handheld that I've got here. And this is kind of a good example of something that's a little more difficult to interface to. And so what I had to do was I went out of the radio and typed in, out to Google and did searching. And I typed on Kenwood D710 Winlink and see what I could find in terms of other people trying to hook the Kenwood radio up to the Winlink. And for this case, there were several other people had some YouTube videos and some other suggestions. Some of them were just flat out wrong. It was just amazed me how some stuff was out there that was this wasn't right. And so basically I was lucky in that I found this little kind of menu set up telling me how to, what interface and what settings I had to do on the radio, because the radio has a variety of different menu options, and basically set those up. and then how to set up in Winlink, how to set up the settings for that, for it, and then basically how to pair it up for Bluetooth. This radio was also a good example because it uses more of a generic interface. In that pull down option, it was the KISS option, and I'll go through more detail. One of the frustrating points of this radio, it does actually have a direct USB to USB connection. There is actually in the radio a micro USB connector, and I go, hey, my computer has a USB. I want to just put a little simple wire, the cable between the radio and the computer. I pretty much spent a good month and a half trying every single thing, probably at least a couple of hundred different options, pretty much finally convincing myself it was not possible, that even though there is a built-in TNC in this radio, that option was not available to me. The only way to talk to it was through Bluetooth. So I feel your pain in terms of trying to go through all the headache of trying to get things connected. But this is kind of, like I say, that crawl, walk, run. This is kind of more of a walk. So in this particular case, using luckily the little configuration setup that I was able to find on the internet, go through and now do the settings a little different. This uses the KISS setting, which is actually a very common one that's used by a lot of radios. And then basically, again, picking the COM port. And in this case, you go to device manager. And here I have actually 2 different Bluetooth. So I had to try one and see if it worked, and then try the other and see if it worked. And then again, setting it to 9600 baud. This radio cannot support communication RF at 9600 baud. So it's only a 1200 baud RF connection in here. So basically, this is an example. Then setting the radio basically to connect it through Bluetooth. I'm actually talking to the same gateway. I turn around and tell it that it's not an APRS. In this case, their nomenclature is a KISS setting. 12 means 1200 baud. Set the station. And in this particular case, you can see it's transmitting. The red bar is across there. And so this is an example of that communication. So basically, connected again, reach the station. It connects to the common message server. In this case, it looked like Chi had sent me a message, the KE6 MVS, and downloaded it similarly. So that's pretty much another, like I say, example of using a radio configurations and setup. Okay, now what I kind of just went through, the examples were fairly simple configurations, but giving you an example of the steps involved. So basically, kind of in preparation for your particular, unless you guys are lucky and have a Kenwood D10, a D710 or a D74, which I think a couple of you guys do have those radios. Most of the additional work will be in more or less addressed in tutorial 4, but it's important to note to a couple of places where you can find additional help. You go to the winlink.org website under their book of knowledge, and they have this great section called how-to recipes. And they literally have dozens of different types of problem solving. Not all of them are just on setups, but there are other things. And you can see here, like one is how to set up your Yaesu FT991, and there's other options. There's ICOM 7300, ICOM 7100, other options. So the kind of his closing and slash homework is to explore other how-to recipes, articles on the Winlink site, or actually do what I did in terms of to kind of type in your radio and then just add Winlink and see what articles and YouTube videos are out there to get an idea in terms of other people's experiences and whatever lessons learned from hooking up similar radios to what you want to do. So that's pretty much it. As part of the backup charts, I just have a little overview of kind of what basic elements of packet radio, how to find out which COM port you're using, and then just general kind of guidelines for how to sending messages. So that's about it. Okay. Questions?
Excellent, very clear, thank you.
Very helpful.
And thank you for picking 2 radios that I own.
Question a little bit off the topic, but you mentioned VARA FM earlier on. Does VARA FM use the same gateways as Packet? Because I can't hit any gateways successfully from my home, and I'm wondering if I tried VARA FM, if there might be a gateway there that's in the area.
My experience has been that generally Packet is the most prevalent, and that then people that operate gateways, then they might then, in addition to Packet, add VARA. So I don't think there's going to be, there might be a few, but I don't think there's any in our area that are just VARA only, that are not Packet also.
Okay, thank you.
Can I jump in a little bit?
By the way, I had the same experience you had in trying to get instructions for how to set up the radio online. I was having some difficulty, and I found some instructions that showed every setting and exactly what it should be on one of my radios. And I've tried it, and absolutely nothing worked. And so I discarded that one and found another one, and that one worked. So yeah. Some of them are good and some of them aren't so good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good. Okay, Chi, you had a question?
Yes, can I jump in for a little bit, maybe a little ahead of the training? While you was talking, I just tested an email and sent it out. It seemed like I can connect to one of the RMS site. I have everything set up here. Can I just see if I can show on the screen what?
I guess just before that, Chi, what specifically are you wanting to, your question?
Oh, I just want to know if how many of our members already has a TNC, how many is still waiting to buy a TNC. So maybe I can jump in for a quick recommendation for the TNC.
Well, that's kind of getting ahead of ourselves. That's what we talk about in tutorial 4.
Okay, all right, then that's okay. Then we'll wait.
Okay.
Can I ask a question that's from the last lesson?
Okay, great.
Okay, everything I thought was working great, and I've been using it for a while. I'm able to send forms and everything. Nothing's coming, though, I realized on the last lesson, to my Express inbox. Everything's going to my regular email address. Even so, if I send something from my regular email address to KM6RTE at Winlink, it doesn't go through.
Okay, my thoughts initially is you're on your own blacklist. Remember we talked about the Winlink Express has a pretty strong spam filter. So unless your email address that you're using to send a message to Winlink from is already on your Winlink Express whitelist, it won't receive you.
It is on the whitelist. I checked.
Okay. It's probably best then to play it safe and if you're sending it from your regular, whatever Gmail, whatever Outlook type of email to Winlink, to precede the subject line with that / WL2K.
I tried that too.
Hmm.
I even disconnected the software. I deleted it and reinstalled it. I've tried like everything. I don't know what the heck it is.
You're not receiving any, you haven't received any Winlink
No.
email.
And on another group, what I'm trying to do is reply to a form. Well, I can't reply to a form if it doesn't come to my inbox. And
Yeah.
know what I mean?
That's a good one. I never heard of that issue. So you're able to send, you can, but you cannot receive.
I get it forwarded to my regular email, but I even tried forwarding from my regular email to my Winlink Express, like a form that I got that I'm supposed to reply to.
Yeah, this is part of the Red Cross MCOM test.
Yeah.
All I can say is just maybe go into your settings, Winlink settings, and make sure everything is filled out correctly.
Yeah, I've done that like 3 times. I can't figure it out. It just doesn't make any sense. I'm sure it's some little thing.
I just sent you a message, Bill.
Okay.
See if you can get that.
I'll do a little research on that and see if I can find anything.
Okay, it's just driving me nuts.
Oh yeah, no, I fully understand. I would drive me nuts too.
All right, thanks.
Technology is awesome when it works.
Yeah.
I don't have that exact problem, but I have a similar question. I have sent via Telnet message to OCHEART and to my own personal email account, and I received the message from my own personal email account, but I haven't received any acknowledgement from OCHEART. Is there any way of telling whether it was received by OCHEART or whether it should have come back and I just haven't received it in my inbox?
How long ago did you do that, Ron?
I did one. It was either yesterday, maybe the day before yesterday. It was very recent, within the last few days.
I've been in there this morning and I didn't see anything from you.
So maybe it wasn't received there.
Yeah, OCHEART comes to me. So if you want to test it that way, just let me know via email, phone, whatever, and we'll just be right there on it rather than sending it to a black hole and never getting a response and not knowing that you didn't get a response, because I can fire it up anytime.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay, I guess any other last questions?
Very
Okay.
good presentation, Scott.
Okay, thanks. Okay, well, the tough one will be next week. But it's been an hour here, so I guess we pretty much covered everything, and I appreciate everybody's sitting in and listening to me drone on. So I guess
find this being very good. Droning on or not, I think you're doing really a good job of breaking it down, presenting it, without getting lost in the details. I think you did a great job with this.
Okay, see everybody in 2 weeks.
Sounds good.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Okay, bye.